Hello, this is George Hutton, and you are listening to the Mind Persuasion Podcast. Today we continue our study of weaponized hypnosis. For more information, please visit mindpersuasion.com/weaponized-hypnosis. In today's podcast, we'll be talking about the nested loop structure. It's common in military strategy, at least in movie military strategy, to confuse the enemy as much as possible. Even when Allied forces launched the D-Day attacks, they spent a lot of effort to trick the Nazis that the attack was coming in another location. If the enemy doesn't know the precise location of the advancing troops, defending against them is inefficient at best. We will be creating a similar situation so that if and when you decide to deliver the knockout blow, you will be able to do so that they won't know it's happening as it's happening, and they won't be sure what happened after it happened. They'll just have a very bad feeling whenever they think of you, and they will want nothing to do with you. And since they won't know exactly how the attack was delivered, they won't be able to recover. If you are going to be ultra-vicious and link the idea of their hopes and dreams, or even their idea of self, to despair and sinister evil, that connection will linger long in their thoughts after you've delivered the mind bomb of mental destruction. This is the equivalent of turning around and punching a would-be rapist or murderer in the throat, both crushing their windpipe and snapping their neck, making him require to use a breathing tube while being a quadriplegic for the rest of his pitiful days. Extremely vicious and nearly impossible to recover from. Just knowing that you have the capability to deliver such deadly destruction to their mental capacity of your enemies will generate inhuman self-confidence. Always keep in mind the idea of learning martial arts so you don't have to get into a fight. Broken stories. When we tell stories, we generally tell them in a linear fashion. A happened, and then B happened, and then C happened. If the storyteller is good and the story is particularly entertaining or exciting, then C will be a mini cliffhanger. The build-up to C will make us eager to find out how the tension was resolved. This structure exists not only in stories but in music as well. The idea of tension release is built into a lot of our common human experiences. Generally speaking, though, once we get to the cliffhanger, we want to find out what happens next. Well-written TV shows put the cliffhanger right at the end, so we'll be sure to watch next week or stay up one more hour to binge watch. What we don't expect is for the story to change completely. For example, imagine you are at a party and somebody starts off with this story. So I was at the mall waiting for my pizza, and this guy in a business suit walked up and called me by name. He said he'd been looking for me and he was glad he finally found me. At first I thought I was going to get a summons or something, but I guess he saw my worry and assured me it was fantastic, life-changing news. He told me he'd wait until I got my order so he could sit down with me and explain what was about to happen. If you told this story at a party, everybody would be curious about why this guy in a suit came up to you in the mall. You couldn't get away with the cliffhanger strategy, at least not like they do on TV. Imagine if the next thing you said was, "And to find out why he wanted to talk to me, you're going to have to come back here next week." People would be upset. They would think you made the whole thing up. When we watch TV, we know the whole thing is made up, and we know that we are watching a serial drama that is unfolding over several weeks. But when you start telling a story at a party or a work conversation, everybody expects to hear a regular story from start to finish. But you can leverage the cliffhanger effect. The way to do that is to simply start another story. But you do so in a way that makes it seem like it might be the same story. You must be very congruent. You can't give any clues that you are actually switching stories. In magic, they have the idea of sleight of hand, where you trick the audience into looking at one hand while you do the magic with the other. This is similar. Think of this as a sleight of story. The idea is to start off with a second story, but not get them to realize it is a second story until they are committed to the second story and are now interested in the second story. For example, a second story on its own might be like this. So I sat down at the table and my wife came out of the bedroom and said she got a strange text from a bank. She had this weird expression on her face and she looked a little excited, so she went to our PC to log on to our account and suddenly started laughing. She said I should take the day off work. I got up to go look, wondering what the heck had just happened. This is another story that ends with a mini cliffhanger. Now let's consider another story that has nothing to do with the first two stories. If it were told on its own, the buildup might be like this. I got up to walk into his office, and when I looked inside, he wasn't behind his desk like he normally was. He was standing at the window looking out, his hands in his pockets. I cleared my throat to let him know I was there. He turned around and smiled at me. He's never, ever smiled at me before. He stood there, smiling at me, and told me to close the door. He came over and sat in the chair next to mine, smiling all the while, and asked me if I liked traveling. This is another story that on its own sounds pretty interesting. It leads up to a mini cliffhanger. Now let's introduce a metaphorical story, maybe about saving money or something. A story that on its own sounds pretty nice, but also pretty plain. Nothing that would be exceptional on its own. They've said that delayed gratification is the best way to save money. And when you invest in the right programs, it can help you a lot. I don't know if you like the idea of investing money to save money, but I went to see an investment counselor and he looked me right in the eye and said, I think the best thing for you to do is to give your money to me and let me manage it for you. This is the best chance you have of being able to get rich. I'll leave it up to you, but when you invest your money with me, I guarantee you'll get rich. Now, the previous little story doesn't really make much sense. Some guy went to see an investment counselor and the investment counselor tried to get him to invest. That sounds common, something not even worthy of relaying at a party. But also notice it contains a lot of command-worthy phrases. Save money, give your money to me, let me manage it, get rich, etc. This short little story by itself might make somebody a little curious, but on its own it wouldn't make anybody decide to invest their money with the speaker. But consider what it sounds like when that story is wrapped inside the other stories. Before we see what that looks like, let's finish up the first three stories. Let's say the first story about a guy at the mall ended up being about some guy who found out that he had an uncle that dies and left him a lot of money. And the second story ended with the guy and his wife finding an extra $10,000 in their account. And let's say the third story ends with a company being bought and the boss telling the storyteller he's in charge of a lot of new accounts and he gets to spend most of his time traveling to exotic locations, visiting rich clients. Put all together, the broken stories would sound like this. So I was at the mall waiting for my pizza and this guy in a business suit walked up and called me by name. He said he'd been looking for me and he was glad he finally found me. At first, I thought I was going to get a summons or something, but I guess he saw my worry and assured me that it was fantastic, life-changing news. He told me he'd wait until I got my order so he could sit down with me and explain what was about to happen. So I sat down at the table and my wife came out of the bedroom and said she got this strange text from the bank. She had this weird expression on her face and she looked a little excited. So she went to our PC to log on to our account and suddenly started laughing. She said I should take the day off from work. I got up to go look, wondering what the heck had just happened. I got up to walk into his office and when I looked inside, he wasn't behind his desk like he normally was. He was standing at the window looking out, his hands in his pockets. I cleared my throat to let him know I was there. He turned around and smiled at me. He's never, ever smiled at me before. He stood there smiling at me and told me to close the door. He came over and sat in the chair next to mine, smiling all the while, and asked me if I liked traveling. They've said that delayed gratification is the best way to save money, and when you invest, in the right programs, it can help you a lot. I don't know if you like the idea of investing money to save money, but I went to see an investment counselor, SP, and he looked me right in the eye and said, I think the best thing for you to do is to give me your money, and let me manage it for you. That is the best chance you have of being able to get rich, I'll leave it up to you, but when you invest your money, with me, I guarantee you'll get rich, So my boss tells me that we've just been purchased by this huge conglomerate and we've got a huge budget. My job is to visit rich clients and just make sure they're okay. Totally easy and lots of travel. When I saw what my wife was so happy about, I was happy as well. The bank found an extra $10,000 in our account. It turns out that I had this uncle that was a bit of an eccentric, and my mom never talked about him because they all hated him. That's why he left me his fortune, since he wanted to piss on my mom. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to pay off my student loans. By the time the second or third story has started, most people would be completely tranced out. What generally happens is that once all the open loops are closed, the central stories, 4, 3, and maybe 2, will be completely forgotten. But the emotions they elicited will still have a very profound impact on the listener. And what happened in the collection of broken stories? All of them were about found money or unexpected financial windfalls. The center story was filled with commands to give money to the speaker. These commands to give money to the speaker are surrounded by a lot of vague ideas about finding unexpected money. The net result will be a collection of feelings about found money connected to the subconscious idea of giving money to the speaker. Now, this won't make anybody get out their wallets and start forking over all their cash, but it will create a very strong, very unconscious belief that the speaker has some superpowers of getting money. So, if he were to later actually give an investment talk and actually ask for money, they would be much more likely to sign up for whatever he was selling. Telling these stories all around the theme of finding money, combined with the direct commands in the center of the story, give me money, etc., all build a strong positive belief in the minds of the listeners about the speaker. And these beliefs will all be about the speaker being some kind of money genius and that his advice will lead to unexpected financial windfalls. They won't know why they think this, as they won't be able to recall the stories. They will just have a strong suspicion that it's true. This is how skilled speakers use embedded commands, anchors, and nested loops. But they can equally be used to build in the belief in your listener's mind that you are the devil himself, and you have the power to destroy their hopes, dreams, and even the very idea of who they are with only your desire to do so. This will make them never, ever want to have anything to do with you ever again. And if you wish, they will have nightmares about you for months. I'm George Hutton. Thank you for listening to the Mind Persuasion Podcast. For more information, please visit mindpersuasion.com/weaponized-hypnosis. I look forward to speaking with you again soon.